Steve Jones here on a beautiful late October afternoon here in Renfrew, Ontario. Walking the downtown, and wow, it's great to be retired and to be able to just come out any afternoon and experience something like this. And also, it's awesome, the community that I live in. It just makes it a good time. Now, I have to wreck it a little bit. Well, not just a little bit, because I have to, or I feel I have to talk to you about Elon Musk. And I don't know, I generally consider Elon Musk to be a juvenile adolescent masquerading as a genius, I suppose. But regardless of how I feel about Elon and his antics outside of engineering and outside of the work that his companies do, his companies of SpaceX and Tesla and the Starlink and God knows what else he's involved in. And you know, as far as I know, as far as I understand, it's all top-notch stuff, right? So regardless of how I feel about the individual as an individual, I have to give credit for something that happened just in the last couple of weeks that is just nothing short of outstanding. And if you've been following the news at all, I got to turn you around here so that I can give you a better back. There's our town hall right there. Nice backdrop. I'll put it right there. We got some flags fluttering in the breeze. This is all excellent stuff. So anyways, back to Elon. SpaceX has had some difficulties over the last couple of years firing off. They put a lot of satellites into space. They're actually involved in the idea of space capsules that will bring people to the International Space Station. They've been doing that for a few years already. So they're contracted to NASA to do that. And no problems, but all the while they've been experimenting with other technologies about how to get things into space, and in particular how to get people into space. And so in the last couple of years, they've been doing those experiments, and often enough, and tragically for their efforts and the money that's involved, they've had a lot of rockets sort of blow up on the launch pads, or they've had rockets go astray, or they've had all sorts of things happen that have sort of set back the program. But I really have to give him his props right now, as much as I hate doing that, but it's only right. That business that SpaceX pulled off with their booster rocket last week or a week and a half ago, absolutely outstanding for so many different reasons. And if you haven't been following the news, what happened was the booster rocket, which is the base of the entire thing. Like, it's made up of a booster rocket, which is basically filled with fuel that will get the capsule that includes the human cargo and the other cargo. It gets it into a position where it can power itself while it's in space. Now, the thing about these booster rockets is traditionally they have come back to Earth. Usually they splash down in the sea if everything's going right. And SpaceX has been able to do that. They have been able to recover some of these booster rockets, but recently they've been able to do something even better than that. And what they've managed to do is they have managed to fire a booster rocket with a capsule on top of it, as per usual. But this time, instead of the rocket coming down and crashing into the sea with a bunch of parachutes, something that we're all familiar with seeing ever since the Apollo program, really back in the late 1960s. Instead, SpaceX has managed to have that booster rocket actually maneuver itself to not necessarily the original launch pad, but to another launch pad, where the pad itself can actually reach out with this series of hooks and actually grab this thing and bring it and embrace it right back into the launch area, which is absolutely stunning. And it's something that we haven't seen something like this in decades. This is something that's going to have an incredible impact on the future, and I need to recognize who's responsible for that. So just aside from like how neat it is for them to be able to recatch a booster rocket, there are other, I would argue, other more important reasons to celebrate this. Now, the first of those has to do with milling technology and lenses. So my experience or my knowledge with lenses is pretty much limited to cameras. And I'm not an engineer, and I'm not going to try and fake that I understand how all this works, but I think I know enough to be impressed by it. So basically, these lenses allow for really finely tuned microelectronics when it comes to milling, which means, you know, putting things together. And the more that you can get down, like they're almost at the atomic level right now, where they can get that level of precision into their manufacturing, whatever it happens to be that they're manufacturing. So right there, the ability to work on these lenses in a zero gravity environment up in space is a major leap forward in terms of semiconductors and chips and all of those sorts of things. You know, as everything gets smaller and smaller and smaller, I guess it shouldn't come as much of a surprise that we actually get down to the atomic, and I'm not even sure about this, perhaps the subatomic level. But that's a possibility now, because the idea of working in a zero gravity environment, which is space, used to be a pretty cool idea, but now it seems to be more closer to reality. So lenses is one of the things that leaps off the page. Another thing is drugs, as in medication. And so this has to do with proteins. And again, I'm out of my whack here. I'm out of my area of knowledge and comfort here. But apparently proteins don't have as much of a shelf life here on Earth under the conditions of gravity. So apparently they last longer if they're in a zero gravity environment, which is good if you happen to be making medications, especially those kinds of medications that are specific to a certain type of ailment, right? The drug industry and their ability to manufacture drugs and medications in space is an important thing, and it's part of this SpaceX achievement. And yes, as hard as it is to say, Elon Musk's achievement as well. Another big deal that's part of all this is in the area of fiber optics, and we're all familiar with the idea of fiber optic cable and all the various uses that is utilized for. And so apparently, again, this same environment is going to enhance their ability to improve upon the fiber optic cable that we have right now. So I don't know if that means that they're going to somehow manage to make it more fibrous or more optical. I don't know. Again, I'm out of my league. But there are plans to have enhancements in the area of fiber optic technology. And of course, that's going to percolate into so many different technologies right here on terra firma. We're looking at the possibility of a number of ranges of scientific exploration, right? Experimental technologies. These are things that can be dabbled at, again, with the advantages of a zero gravity environment that space or near orbit provides that isn't available right here on Earth. And so experimental technology is going to be a big thing. And another thing that's going to be huge is the aspect of 3D printing. 3D printing is huge. If you can imagine a scenario, again, in zero gravity conditions, where we can literally upload raw materials of certain types to space and have them worked at and milled and all that kind of stuff in space, so that a finished product is actually the end result, and then have that finished product downloaded. Now, I'm not talking like Wi-Fi upload and download here. We're still talking about physical transfer of physical materials here. But the idea that we can get the materials up to space and then have a finished product come back down from space is mind-blowing, really. I mean, a few years ago, the whole concept of 3D printing itself was mind-blowing. But here we go, and here's Elon bringing us closer to the day when 3D printing in space becomes a reality. And as it becomes a reality in space, it will become a reality here on Earth. You know, the whole idea of building ships, you know, if we're talking about, and you know Elon's big, he wants to go to Mars, right? Never mind the moon, it's the Mars or nothing at the Mars. You know how Elon's big on space travel of humans, and especially space travel to Mars. This puts him, you know, quite a distance closer to that sort of goal, as fantastic as a statement as that is. Because of this 3D aspect and all the other stuff that I mentioned, that, you know, we're getting closer to the time when we can make space stuff, like ships to go to other planets and that sort of thing, that we can make that stuff in space for space, rather than making it down here on Earth and strapping it to this great big rocket full of explosives and gasoline, all the stuff that's involved with having to take something from here and get it there. The final thing, and I have not heard this mentioned, but every time there's a great leap forward in technology like this, there's got to be somewhere a military application that's going to be part of that. And so, if I was the Russians, if I was the North Koreans, if I was the Chinese, I won't mention the Iranians because they're pretty far distant when it comes to technology and military applications. But if I was one of those folks, I wouldn't be having a really happy time here, knowing that Elon Musk and the United States of America have managed to pull off something like this. And so it's just another example of how everybody's struggling to keep up with the Americans, but it's like everybody is having difficulty, you know, every time they feel that they're getting close to what the Americans have, something like this happens, and it makes them feel like they're 100 years behind the curve again. And they're right, they are. And I'm being generous with the 100 years. But anyways, the military applications of this, well, you know, I don't have the time, nor do I have the information to be able to share with you what they are. But, you know, if you use your imagination, as I'm sure the boyos and the girlos at the Pentagon are doing, trying to figure out how to harness things like this and apply it in the military sphere, that is just, I would not want to be an enemy of America specifically, and an enemy of the West, generally speaking. So there's got to be other advantages that I've not mentioned. For me, it was just when I first saw this, I thought, oh my God, how freaking cool is that? And I don't care if Elon Musk is behind it, whatever. I'll protest against Elon in my own way. I'll tell you what, I won't buy a Tesla, all right? Well, actually, I can't afford a Tesla, so that's an easy thing for me to say. But I think you get my point. I mean, the guy is a certifiable blue chip asshole, all right? And there's nothing happening here that changes that. But you know what? As inconvenient as it is, the guy's pretty smart at something. You know, I'm not saying he's the engineer that put all this stuff together. But what I am saying is he's the guy that arranged for the people and the things the people needed to make this happen. He arranged for that to happen as the head of the corporation, one of many. So kudos to Elon Musk, even though I can't stand the guy. But there you go. That whole thing of capturing that booster rocket, reaching out and grabbing it and bringing it back in, that's pretty cool stuff. From downtown Renfrew, I'm Steve Jones.